Hello everybody, hope you're doing okay. Welcome to the Pound at Finchdene. We're going to do a session today in the Vaporfly 4s. And these have just come today. Here they are. They're the lightest shoes that I've got in a carbon plate, 222 grams. That compares to 250 grams in the Vaporfly 1. So already I'm getting quite excited. Sue's done an unboxing shorts video up there. She seems to like them. Okay, so I thought I'd give a very brief overview of the shoe. This is just so light, 222 grams. And what's really interesting, I thought, is in the stock size, it says it's 190, which I think is a UK 9. This is a UK 13. So the scaling and the sizes is amazingly close in this. Normally, some shoes like the Vomero 18 maybe like 100 grams more than the stock size, and this is literally just over 30. So yeah, this is the lightest carbon racer I've got. The next lightest is the Vaporfly 1, coming out around about 250, and this is 222. You can see like the nod to the prototypes there, the number there. Also in the insole, it's got a little label on there which I'll read it out to you. It says a weight of 169 grams, not 190, and a plate angle of 20. Yeah, not quite sure what that's all about, but if you want to know more about the plates, I recommend you go and watch Seguso running. The stack height in this one is in the standard size, notionally 35 at the back and 29 at the front for a 6mm drop. Now, as Ed Budd is common to point out, that's very much the stack height in the stock size. So I think for me, it's probably around about 40. But I always feel like in stack heights, I always reference them to what the stock size are. So then I know how they kind of feel. And in this one, it didn't feel, when I was running in it didn't feel like it was like abnormally low. I mean, that's like 5 mils less than the World Athletic legal standard, isn't it? But I didn't really feel like I was running in a low drop shoe, should we say, so especially not for 5k running. The upper is nicely conforming. If you remember from the Vaporfly 3, unless you had really wide feet, that was really quite a tough upper to get a good lockdown. I had to do an awful lot of messing around with the upper here, really had to pull them in, do a runner's knot and all sorts of stuff. This one really is just a case of putting them on, pulling them in and off and running. Some people said the laces are a bit suspect. I thought, well, laces are absolutely fine. They feel really light actually. They're sort of not really the sort of segregated ones, but I think in this sort of shoe you want something that's light as possible, and anything that's kind of a gimmicky sort of thing, well, you know, it just adds the extra few grams. I think the whole idea of this shoe was to minimize the weight as much as possible. So yeah, that's a very airy upper. I did feel it was ever so slightly short when I first put them on, so slightly be aware there. I always take a 13 and a Nike. When I actually got running in them, I didn't find how many problems, but bear that in mind. In terms of the feel, I mentioned this a bit more when I'm actually out on the run. I did feel it was more like a Vaporfly 3, sort of like a slightly soft feeling compared to the 1 and the 2. Not in a bad way, but it felt like I had a much less of a Vaporfly 3 on my feet, which in itself are quite a minimal shoe. So yeah, in that sense it was good. Maybe just very, very slightly unstable when I was going at slower speeds, and maybe I was engaging the rear a bit more. But the whole point of this shoe really is to run fast, and I don't think there's any point in buying a race shoe to then plod around in. So if you see people saying, oh, it's good for every day, well, yeah, you can wear everything every day if you really want to. But for me, this is a shoe for going as fast as I can, 5k, 10k speed. Can I do a marathon in it? Well, I'm sure I could do a marathon in it. This is far more of a beefed up shoe than the Adios one that I wore 10 years ago, and the version of a Nike Streak best part of 20 years ago. So we are getting a bit sport with shoes these days. I haven't got any immediate plans to run the marathon anyway, so by the time I end up doing that, I can choose a shoe that's suitable at the time. But yeah, I certainly would run a marathon that if life depended on it, no problem at all. Just have a look at the heel cup here. Not much to the heel cup, but there's a bit of structure there. It's not quite as fold down flappy as some shoes you get now. So yeah, something there. But I did find it was like nice and airy at the back. Some people said that it might get some heel slipping. I thought, if anything, it was actually taking pressure off my Achilles because it wasn't really digging into it too much. So in that sense, it was nice. It's got like the normal little sort of spongy heel cup there that you've seen in other Vaporflies. So in that sense, it was quite familiar. But yeah, the fact that I have to sort of pull in my laces a fair bit means that the heel is very rarely going to be coming out for me. But if you've got a lot wider feet and you haven't got your lockdown anywhere near as tight as I've got it, then it may be an issue at the back there for some people. So there's something to be aware of. Outsole showing a bit of dirt after my initial session, but yeah, it hasn't fallen apart yet, which is good. I mean, a shoe like this, I think you have to remember that really it's designed for going as fast as possible. It's not really designed for miles and miles and miles, so there's just enough padding here at the rear. This obviously was white, and yeah, the rubber here, I think they've said that they've reduced it as much as they possibly can. I mean, I was running on a dry road today, absolutely no problem at all. Quite a few corners actually, but you know, no problems at all there. I mean, really, does anyone really have a problem with cornering on a dry road? I think if you do, you probably just need to take them a bit slower. And at my speeds, 6-minute mile pace at very best round the corner, well, I'm hardly exactly sort of flying around the corners at like 4:30 or even 4-minute miles that the true elites might do in a very short race. So yeah, in that sense, you're kind of thinking, well, sometimes what are some people on about, to be honest? But yeah, my overall impressions was, yeah, this is a good shoe. Very nice to have a very light shoe. It wasn't something that absolutely wowed me, but I didn't expect it to. I think that's the problem these days. Any shoe you do get is really just an iteration from one before. And I think it's very much horses for courses. I think this is a shoe that's very light, and if it's any way sort of like a slight rise, I felt like it was really nice because I could just sort of bound up that hill just a bit easier than perhaps I would have done otherwise. Compare this to, say, a Vomero 18 or a Pegasus Premium. These are pretty much half the weight, which is absolutely crazy, given the fact that they're both of UK 13. So let's crack on to this session, and I'll explain a bit more how I did and a few more observations along the way. Got a 5k on Tuesday, well, at least I've entered one, and I need to sort of basically see how I am, because I've been suffering again from man flu, the fourth time this winter. Did quite a good park run, as you saw, last Saturday, and then promptly got ill afterwards. So this has got my first sort of session since then, and the session is 3 minutes threshold, then 4x4 minutes hard, 5k pacing. We'll see how we go on that and report on the way. Okay, so very first initial impressions after a mile sort of warm up here. They feel more like the Vaporfly 3 than the 1 and the 2. Just feel like that slightly softer feel. They do feel definitely lighter. I feel ever so slightly shorter. Well, not too short, but shorter. Let's see how we go with that. I've got very thin socks on as usual. About to start my 3 minute threshold, so we'll see how it is at a proper pace. I don't really feel the 6 mil drop, which is good, like I would do in a Hoka. So the effective drop may be more like a 6 to a 7 to an 8 anyway, so this is good. So let's see how I do, going a bit faster. Okay, the 3 minutes done. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I think I had a slightly downhill and slightly downwind. This is back to Rowland's Castle that way, so and I sort of feel like I'm going slightly uphill into a headwind. I've identified a triangle though, so which is flat, just under half a mile. So that should do me well for the 4 minute reps. And see where we go. It did feel with these that you don't feel the plate quite as much as I was expecting to say on the Vaporfly 1 and Vaporfly 2. So definitely a little bit softer. Definitely feels nice though, but just one of those shoes I think just need to get used to them. And I think we're really test now when I'm really going to some effort. I mean, that felt like it was not really a jog, but I wasn't really having to work too hard, as it were. But yeah, seems all good so far. Let's see how we do on these 4 minute reps at 5k speed. Okay, it's about 4 minutes for that kilometre, so maybe not as quite as good as I thought, but I did have 2 sections where I thought I was going slightly to a headwind and slightly uphill, so making my excuses. Yeah, definitely feeling there's a bit of softness to these Vaporflies. Quite nice. I wouldn't say at this day and age any shoe's going to wow you. I think it's so much down to your fitness now, which, yeah, no shoe's going to suddenly magic you to a performance level way above where you are anymore, unfortunately, unless you've literally just started running last week. Yeah, that's supposed to me who's only over 40 years. But yeah, that's a good pace, and I've been suffering a bit from a virus, so yeah, I think it's all good stuff. But I think I'll put my camera down, and then hopefully I can catch myself running past, see what I look like. Okay, 2 and 3 done. Yeah, okay. I'm starting to get used to these shoes a bit more now. Get up on my toes a bit more. I suppose I'm not really going absolutely caning it. I do have some 30-second sprints to finish this one off, so that'd be a good little test, wouldn't it? So I think we'll head into the next one. About 40 seconds to go. The last of the 4 minute reps. I was expecting these to feel harder actually. Maybe I need to push more. I think there's an element just making sure I'm okay. Not sort of too much for this virus still coughing a bit, but yeah, but I think the paces are sort of sub 20 pace, which is exactly what I was meant to do. Okay, the 4 minute rep's done. I got that one done in 6:14 pace, so yeah, that's a nice 5k race speed if I can manage that. Maybe slightly down wind though, but now I got some 30-second sprints, so we'll see how we go with these. Okay, so session done. Yeah, it wasn't too bad a session, and the Vaporflies did fine. I think I'd give them a try in the 5k on Tuesday if I'm okay. I think this session tonight was as much testing me as it was the Vaporflies. But yeah, I think both come through well. As I said, I don't think these Vaporflies will be the answer to all your prayers, and every shoe that's gone before is like worse, and this is suddenly the answer to your salvation. But 222 grams. I did notice that when I was going up the very slight rises into the wind. I don't know if I was just going a better pace, but it just felt like I was having to been able to hold my pace just that much better, which is always nice to know, isn't it? So right, I jogged back to Finchdene now. This isn't really a shoe review of this. Seguso Running is probably the best one to have a look at that, and Robin Road to Trail has got, and then we're trying to persuade Andy FOD that he needs a pair of Vaporflies. He's a bit more of a Puma fan these days, burning up the roads with his DV8 Nitro Elite 3s. I think my coach Matt Reese has got a pair, so it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. Good to see him running back again. He did a part run just outside 16 minutes. Very good stuff. And Andy was at 16:04, so it'll be very close between those two at the moment, wouldn't it? Right, let's get back to the end and let's have a look at some data as well when we get back. Okay, let's have a look on Garmin Connect for a change. So I popped up in a village called Finchdene, just obscured there by the symbols, just to the left of the A3M Horndine there, and yeah, run up this hill here for the warm-up. And then once I got to the top there, it was basically flat. So I did the initial 3-minute threshold down towards Rowland's Castle here, which you can see. And then I did most of the 4-minute efforts around this triangle. Some sharp turns there for sure, but it certainly helps you to check that the grip was fine, which it was. And then for the last one, I then went out towards Horndine on this country lane, and then the hill sprints basically were up and down this little stub of a country lane here, which I'll check out another time. So it wasn't too warm, but it had been quite warm. It was starting to get a bit chilly, so glad to be actually running, but I was only in a singlet, which is nice for early April. 22-mile-an-hour wind. It didn't feel quite that windy, but certainly did notice there was a bit of breeze in the air. So yeah, that was definitely a factor. Maybe took off some of the edge on the speed. If we scroll down and look at our splits here, which I've highlighted in green, so this is the 3-minute threshold, which did feel quite easy. I think because it was slightly downhill, but I managed a 6:31 pace for that, and then I went into a 6:39, and she went slower, and I actually felt like I was working harder. Sometimes that happens, doesn't it? It just depends on the nature of the course. And then the next three were very even pace, 6:18, 6:17, 6:15. It's always good to see a very gradual progression, and those were very, very slightly undulating, but largely flat, to be honest. And then the cadences certainly showed that the Vaporfly 4 is a shoe that allows me to get a good cadence up, so I was into the mid 180s and almost into the high 180s, wasn't it, for the 5k efforts. And then for the sprints, I was into the mid 190s, which is kind of what I expect. Ground contact time balance seems to be slightly more balanced when I was running faster, which normally happens, but nothing too worried about there. Just that one there, 53%, just need to be a bit wary of that. And then the stride lengths, well, yeah, with my high cadence, then the stride lengths aren't massive, but seeing it over 150 means I was certainly shifting, and just under 140 in the 5k efforts is about par for the course. Heart rates got to a maximum of 146. I didn't really feel like I was working too hard here, but felt like I was trying as hard as I dared today, and yeah, good to get through it after yet another bout of minor man flu. So yeah, all in all, about the stats I would expect to see, so all good stuff. Okay, hope you found this interesting. Like and subscribe, and see you next one then. Bye! And there are some bye fans I know from my last video.